Great day to you, my precious learner. I am Perfecto Tiro Marate, your grade 10 English teacher broadcaster from Santa Ana National High School. For today, you will learn how to critique a literary selection based on the following approaches. We have the structuralist or formalist, the moralist, Marxist, feminist, historical, and reader response. After going through this module, you are expected to: number 1, define critiquing as a literary selection. Number 2, identify the different approaches in critiquing a literary selection. And number 3, critique a literary selection. In this module, you will learn the skill that may help you develop your critical thinking. You'll be able to communicate your views, ideas, or feelings to a specific subject or issue in the best way by applying the lesson that you gained today. You will be exposed to different stories around the world. May you find significant learning experiences and joy from our discussion. So, are you excited about our lesson today? Grab your English 10 Module 4 in Quarter 3 now and let's start the fun and learning. Let's go! Read each question carefully and select the correct answer. Write your answer sheet on a separate sheet of paper. So in your module, you have your pre-test numbers 1 to 15. So you're going to answer that in a separate sheet of paper. Go over your module. Were your all answers correct? Let's find out now. So based on the answer key from 1 to 15, you are given there the answers. So I'm sure to base your honesty, please check your answers. Every day in our lives, we critique things, may it be a situation or a person. Critiquing may help you to think logically and create your own insight of the story. In this module, you will learn how to critique a literary selection based on the following approaches: structuralist or formalist, moralist, Marxist, feminist, historical, reader response. Happy learning! What is critiquing a literary selection? According to Cruz F. of University of California, it is the recent consideration of literary works and issues. It applies as a term to any argumentation about literature, whether or not specific works are analyzed. Plato's cautions against the risky consequences of poetic inspiration in general in his Republic are thus often taken as the earliest important example of literary criticism. Criticism will here be taken to cover all phases of literary understanding, though the emphasis will be on the evaluation of literary works and of the author's places in literary history. To understand it better, watch this. So you are given a 6-minute discussion video about critiquing a literary selection which shall be played. So you refer to your youtube.com. What are the approaches in critiquing a literary selection? Let's discuss them. The first one is structuralist and formalist. What is structuralism? It is a term embracing a family of theories that between them address all phenomena of the human world, notably language, literature, cookery, kinship relations, dress, and human self-perception. In all these domains, structuralists claim the observable, apparently separate elements are rightly understood only when seen as a position in a structure or system of relations. Let's go to number 2, the moralist. What is this approach? A moralistic approach focuses individuals, couples, families, and professionals on a moralistic definition of relationship, life, and family processes that presumes a moral ascendancy of one value system over others. An individual, one member of the couple or family, therapists, priests, pastors, rabbis or ministers, authors, or other pundits postulate a correct way to be in a relationship. What is Marxist? Marxist is a philosophy or a Marxist theory which works in philosophy that are strongly influenced by Karl Marx's materialist approach to theory or works written by Marxists. Marxist philosophy may be broadly divided into Western Marxism, which drew out of various sources, and the official philosophy in the Soviet Union, which enforced a rigid reading of Marx called dialectical materialism. Marxist philosophy is not a strictly defined subfield of philosophy because the diverse influence of Marxist theory has extended into fields as varied as aesthetics, ethics, ontology, epistemology, theoretical psychology, and philosophy of science, as well as its obvious influence on political philosophy and the philosophy of history. The next one is feminist. It is a belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. Although largely originating in the West, feminism is manifested worldwide and is represented by various institutions committed to activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. The historical approach is a literary criticism in the light of historical evidence or based on the context in which a work was written, including facts about the author's life and the historical and social circumstances of the time. This is in contrast to other types of criticism, such as textual and formal, in which emphasis is placed on examining the text itself, while outside influences on the text are disregarded. Let's go to the reader response. A view of literary interpretation associated with the American critic Stanley Fish. It holds that meaning does not reside in the text but in the mind of the reader. The text functions only as a canvas onto which the reader projects whatever his or her reactions may be. The text is a cause of different thoughts but does not provide a reason for one interpretation rather than another. The theory chimes in with much in postmodernism but threatens to make a mockery of the fact that there is such a thing as learning to read. Also, that a sign such as sharp bend does not only cause some people to expect a sharp bend but gives them good reason to do so. See also indeterminacy of translation. Here are additional information and examples to understand the approaches more. So, look at your module. You are given there an example of the different types of approaches to our structuralism. Like in the first one, you have an example of an apple. If an apple is based on structuralism, it is crisp, sweet, juicy, round, and hard. Another example is describing your experience at the ocean by saying it is windy, salty, and cold, but rejuvenating. Humans consider it wrong to kill one another. This can be seen when looking to law society has put in place on the subject. A fallacious belief would be that because humans deem killing one's own species to be wrong, this practice does not occur in the animal kingdom. However, it happens all the time. There are many species that kill one another in the wild. Humans believe that this is immoral, has no bearing on whether or not this practice occurs in nature. That is for the moralists. Let's go to the Marxists. The simplest goals of the Marxist literary criticism can include an assessment of the political tendency of a literary work, determining whether its social content or its literary form are progressive. It also includes analyzing the class construct demonstrated in the literature. One of the examples is the movie entitled Ka Hector, a 1980s movie which depicts how the NPA fought for the rights against the government. That's Marxist. Let's go to feminists. A Filipino movie entitled Ang Tanging Ina, where the protagonist, with 3 dead husbands and 12 children to take care of, fights to be both a provider and homemaker. Frustrated between staying out to earn a living and staying in to take care of her children, she desperately hides her hardships. She was able to raise 12 children without the presence of their father, a representation that woman can stand and do things what a man. Truly a very feminist movie. This is an example of feminist. Let's go to an example of historical. In the Philippine context, the movie General Luna is one of the best historical movie ever created by the Filipinos. It shows complete details and information that General Luna and his men did before. The message that the filmmaker wants us to know is that General Luna didn't give up the fight until the end, even though other generals or high ranks in the government did not help him at all. That's historical. Let's go to reader response. At its most basic level, reader response criticism consider readers' reactions to literature as vital to interpreting the meaning of the text. If the teleserye Ang Provinciano was a literary text like a novel, it would have received a lot of reader responses. Now, you already have the knowledge about critiquing a literary selection. At this time, let us apply what you have learned. This story that we will have is one of the most famous works of literature of all time. Have fun with this activity. Read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. These will reflect on your screen after my instructions. On a separate sheet of paper, Make a critique of the story and analyze what approach is being applied in the selection. A sample format is provided after the story. How was your experience in writing your analysis? You may check the rubric now as your guide. Let us remember that when we read and explore literature, it can be compared to traveling, where it can lead you to other places, especially those are interesting to you. Through critiquing a literary selection or literary criticism, you are able to appreciate the beauty of literature, its craftsmanship, historical context, and a lot of other issues. The basic approaches in critiquing a literary selection are: number 1, structuralist or formalist. Number 2, moralist. Number 3, Marxist. Number 4, feminist. Number 5, historical. And the last one is reader response. Structuralist or formalist approach addresses all phenomena of the human world, especially on language, literature, cookery, kinship relations, dress, and human perception. The moralist approach focuses on individual couples, families, and professionals on a moralistic definition of relationship, life, and family processes that presumes a moral dominance of one value system over others. The Marxist approach has extended into fields as varied as aesthetics, ethics, ontology, epistemology, theoretical psychology, and philosophy of science, as well as its obvious influence on political philosophy and the philosophy of history. The feminist approach is the belief in social, economic, and political equality of sexes. This approach focuses on the women's rights and interests. Let's go to historical approach. It is a literary criticism in the light of historical evidence. The reader response theory, or also known as the RRT, is a view of literary interpretation which holds that meaning does not reside in the text but in the mind of the reader. It is indeed very easy to grieve our critic, may it be in a literary selection, in a certain situation, or even to a person. But bear in mind that critical thinking is also needed in making your own critic. Let us inculcate in our minds that making a critic does not always equate with negative feedback. Rather, let us use this as an academic assessment to a work or idea. Indeed, let us critique wisely. Your output on critiquing a literary selection shows that you have successfully grasped the lesson. At this point, let us assess what you have learned earlier. Have fun in identifying if the following statements are correct or not. So in your module, you have there activity 3. The answer is correct or not. So you have 2 choices. So according to your module, you read that. Read each statement carefully. Identify if it is correct or not. If it's correct, write the word true. Meanwhile, if it's not, write the word false. So, go back to your module. I hope that you have answered everything there, correct or not, true or not. Then, you check because you have already the answer key. Let's call it a day, class. This has been Perfecto Tiro Marate, your grade 10 English teacher broadcaster from Santa Ana National High School.